Island Podcast, a weekly podcast focusing on everything Assassin's Creed, community, news, and discussion. I am not one of your hosts, Aftermath1231. Today I, McCrackenway, am the showrunner. Joining me, as usual, is Aries.
Hello, friends.
Today, our guest is Matt from the Dan and Matt Network.
Hi, guys.
Per usual, we will first discuss Matt's time in the community, then move on to a discussion on the ins and outs of Sages, and the community highlight by Nitrosphere 670, and wrap up with a discussion on soundtracks. The show starts now.
This week we are lucky enough to be joined by Matt of the Dan and Matt Network. If you haven't seen his show, the Dan and Matt Show is a show that focuses mostly on Assassin's Creed. There are some gameplay bits. He did a segment on his UB Workshop collection, which we'll talk about later. And also every so often there is a Friday podcast where he does news and whatnots. So Matt, tell us about how you got into Assassin's Creed in the very beginning.
Well, I've been into Assassin's Creed from the very first game. I remember being super excited for it as soon as it got announced. I was like, holy crap, that looks like Prince of Persia, but like ridiculously awesome. And I got it and was immediately addicted. And then I think my severe addiction to this franchise began with Assassin's Creed 2 and that ending where Minerva just like looks right at the camera, and I felt like she was looking right at me, and I was like, "This is the best game ever. I'm in love with this franchise." So that's my beginning.
So how did the Dan and Matt Network and the Matt Show come to be?
It was just about a year ago. We decided that our fanaticism over this stuff had to be recorded. So we got together and we started talking, and we was like, hey, let's do a podcast where we just talked about our favorite games, and most notably Assassin's Creed. And we were talking about that stuff all day, every day, without even scripting anything or anything like that. So we just decided to do a podcast about it.
Nice. And in the Dan and Matt Show, as I mentioned earlier, one of your recent videos, you showed off your very extensive UB Workshop collection. I happen to also have a, not as extensive, but a decently sized UB Workshop collection. What are some of your favorite pieces of theirs?
I would have to say I really like the jackets that they have, like the Desmond jackets, because it's like you're taking a piece of the game with you wherever you go, and they like do it subtly enough that it looks like a normal jacket to like people who don't know the game, and it's like I have a secret going around with me while I'm like walking around New York or something.
Yeah.
I have the
jackets are fantastic.
Yeah, I have the Arno jacket that I've worn to several somewhat official functions, over like slacks and a shirt, and I've gotten a lot of compliments on it. It's a nice jacket.
I've pretty much been wearing the what's it called, the Allegiance hoodie all winter. McCrackenway and I live in Boston, and it was very cold this winter.
It was rough.
So I had that hoodie to keep me warm, and it did excellent.
Oh, that's so awesome.
So in one of your recent videos, I believe it was the first impressions on Assassin's Creed Rogue. So maybe not super recent, but it's there. You made an interesting point about the modern day, about why it's valid. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. I have said on many occasions that the modern day is my favorite part of the entire franchise. It's like the glue that holds everything together, and it's like I feel like they made it in our world. Like I could like go take a weekend to just see the offices at UB at not Ubisoft, but at Abstergo Entertainment, and it just feels so real, and it makes everything feel like so grounded, and that's why I think it works, because it's not like they're beating you over the head with like, oh, there's this secret war going on and it's crazy. No, it's like a real company that could exist, and I just think it's such a good idea, and it's so well done. And it honestly really upsets me when I see like the comments like the modern day has to go. It's terrible. I'm like, it like breaks my heart.
Yeah. So, as always on our podcast, we have one final question. What is your favorite Assassin's Creed game?
I would have to say Assassin's Creed 2, and I feel like that's a super repeated answer because I feel like a lot of people's favorite Assassin's Creed game is 2, but that's where we first got the glimpse into like the first civilization, and that's just the coolest thing to me, and I will be forever addicted to that game.
As promised, we are now going to have a discussion on the ins and outs of sages. They were introduced in Assassin's Creed 4, and since then we've had, or at least we know of, 5 sages, I think. That would be Roberts, Germain, Demolay, Thomas Cavanaugh, and John Standish, otherwise known as John from IT. So, somebody want to talk on that first?
I'll start. The thing that I thought was interesting about the way stages have been implemented was, until AC4, we hadn't even heard the word sages used at all. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it's a very intricate part of the plot and how, everything gets moved forward with Roberts. And I guess we'll start with Roberts because he's the first one we see. But I really like how the way that they introduce him is he's this sage. You don't know anything about him. He's a nobody as far as you're concerned, but you just need him. You need his blood to open some door or something, whatever. They don't really explain it very well in the beginning, but you figure it out later. And then I like how you're in Principe in Africa to do, I forgot what it was in that actual mission, and you see him taking his famous red coat off of a dead guy. And he's like, oh, by the way, I'm Bartholomew Roberts, who happened to be the most important pirate ever.
Maybe most.
Well, he was the most successful, not the most important.
Yeah.
But I like the way the reveal was done. I thought it was very neat how it's like, oh, wait, you're the same guy from earlier, but you're a pirate now. And then, whoa.
I think Roberts as well may have started some misconceptions about sages. For instance, a lot after AC4, he and John from IT shared the same handlebar mustache. And so people thought that was a characteristic of sages.
They're born with the mustache.
Yeah, and that they all looked exactly like that. And that was, oh man. So, I might have been one of those people for a while.
Right, but like even in the statue, like when Edward Kenway opens up the statue the statue has a handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
That was crazy. I was like, God.
That was the point, wasn't it? Was like that. This is the man. Do you recognize this man? Yes, I would swear I've seen him. Exactly. So I guess that's still a bit muddled, maybe. And then also, I thought it was weird because he's Welsh, I believe, but he looks very, like Texas biker gang, honestly. Like, I would have put him as, Latino or something from the name, but then you hear his voice, and it's not at all Latino.
Yeah.
And actually, a neat bit about Roberts and John Standish, they're actually voiced by the same guy. I don't know his name, I can pull it up, but they are, in fact, voiced by the same dude. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but that guy sounded exactly like the guy I don't know if you guys remember unlocking videos in Assassin's Creed 3 multiplayer, and
Yeah, somewhat. I
the
didn't get through all of it, but
Oliver
unlock-
Milburn. There we go.
Can you see if like he did the erudito, like when you unlock stuff? I feel like that's the
Doesn't show
same
anything
guy.
for Erudito on John Standish's page. No, I
you
think
can
that's
search
something
the
else
voice actor
entirely.
on IMDb. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, sages. So
Yes.
he's the first one we meet. I mean, well, technically, I think we meet.
He's the first
John-
one we meet.
We meet John from IT first,
Yeah.
but we only see his legs.
Yes.
Yeah.
John's legs.
I think that was a
The mustache was the big reveal when you're in
Yeah.
the underground bunker, and it's like, hey, guess what? Mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have
Also
given
gonna
away
stab you.
the plot immediately. But yeah, so I guess we've kind of danced around it, but to put a more exact definition on a sage here, a sage is a semi-reincarnation of Juno's human lover from who we learn about in AC3.
Aita.
Yeah, Aita. And so I guess it was hinted at in AC3 with with that small piece. But the reason I say semi-incarnation is because it's not straight reincarnation like, this person, Aita was this person, and then he died, and then he was this person, and then that person died, and then there was another person.
Right,
You can
right.
have multiple sages at the same time with somewhat their own personalities, and at least from Tom Cavanaugh's Letters in a Bottle that you can collect in AC4, it sounds like they just slowly gain an understanding of who or what they are until they understand their purpose or whatever, which is to free Juno.
Right. And it almost seemed like with Kavanaugh, you saw like what was happening to him and what he was going through.
Mm-hmm.
And then at first he thinks he's just nuts. And then he realizes like what's going on, and he's this, semi-reincarnated guy, and it's crazy. But when you get to John Standish, I feel like when he realizes who he is and like what he's supposed to do, he's like pissed about it. Like he almost like resents humans, and
He
it
becomes
was super. Yeah, it was like creepy.
Yeah, he becomes like fanatical.
Yeah.
And I guess that points like to, they do have, they're not just straight reincarnations, they do seem to have their own personalities. Like Thomas Cavanagh, for instance, actually spent time with the assassins and just kind of accepted that he was just going to stay where he was, just like sit there until he died. And then, Standish became fanatical. Jacques de Molay not Jacques de Molay. Well, as far as I know, Jacques de Molay didn't do anything. But Germain went in an entirely different direction. He got. We see briefly Assassin's Creed Unity spoilers. I guess should have put this at the beginning because there are sages in Assassin's Creed Unity. But so when we see that we see in his memories the point where he's first seeing or understanding all this first Civ stuff, and he decides that for some reason he doesn't even mention Juno really. He just says Jacques de Molay had the right idea, the divine right of kings, blah 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 blah, and he goes in an entirely different direction from, as far as I can tell, the other sages we've had.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot because it was so long ago since I played Unity. What was oh god, I just forgot his name. Germain's motivation. He has a cloak and he has the Sword of Eden, but what does he actually do?
And I think he doesn't really. You don't really hear it specifically until the execution of King Louis XVI, where he says, Jacques de Molay's great truth, the divine right of kings is a falsehood. Basically, that's what he says. Which is like, that's a big thing in history, but somewhat for Assassin's Creed, it's almost tame, because that's exactly what the French Revolution was anyway.
Right.
Yeah. I guess I could say that with the divine right of kings being a falsehood, that could be just kind of a reinforcement of the common Templar idea that kings don't really rule anything. We, the Templars, kind of control all the things.
Or
and
perhaps
that could play into
or perhaps that Juno
the schism between the two bits of Templars at the beginning of Unity.
Or perhaps that could be... I mean, he still doesn't mention Juno, so it's hard to say anything relating to him and Juno. But almost like the recognition that, at least to the sages, they view Juno as the ultimate authority, and there's no one...
That's a good point.
Yeah. Juno didn't say this guy could rule. Why did that? He doesn't have no divine right. Whatever.
Right. And then...
Does Roberts mention Juno ever?
He says Aita. He mentions the connection in his last words in the memory corridor. I don't think he mentions it any other point. He might allude to it, but I don't think he mentions anything specifically for most of the game.
Fun fact, Aita doesn't have a handlebar mustache.
yeah, at least he
debunked.
Although an interesting thing with Aita is that...
Really fast, before we move away from Roberts, I just want to say that, as I'm remembering briefly more, I think he mentions that he's sad that he could not be there to see... I don't think he mentions Juno's name, but he says, her revival or awakening or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, anyway. Aita.
But also a thing is that one of the grand ideas to save the world from the first solar flare was to take first civ minds and put them in mechanical and human bodies. And that was part of the reason why they created humans in the first place, as kind of a replacement of sorts. And the deal was that when he gets put in his body's doing fine, but his mind's starting to fall apart. Mm-hmm. And while his body would survive, quote, his mind became brittle and catatonic. And eventually he asked Juno to kill him to end his suffering. So when we were talking about earlier with John almost having a hateful attitude towards humanity, that could be part of why that the sages have a disdain for humanity, because that's why they ended up, Aita ended up dying in the first place. And as they are the instrument of Juno's will, Juno would probably also reasonably be very pissed at humans.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then where I thought it was going, in Unity, again, spoilers or whatever, but when...
I mean, we already spoiled that Germain was a sage.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry, everyone. But when they did the Phoenix project, I was super into that. And I didn't know where they were going with that, but I thought we were going to slowly unlock more of those videos, but it was just that one.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that sages, compared to humans, humans have 0.002 or 5% link in DNA to first civilization DNA, and the sages have 5 to 6%, and that's why sages are so important. Going after them, all that stuff. But it's so interesting, and I think a little bit creepy that Aita is trapped, and he's going through different lifetimes, and it's like you said, it's half Aita and half just the normal person's personality. It's crazy. He's trapped, and it's weird and creepy, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's like a wacky version of Groundhog Day, but things are changing.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that cutscene in Unity, it implied an interesting direction for the modern day with sages.
Yeah.
Which I guess still has yet to be realized. Because sages are the biggest factor in the modern day right now. I mean, discounting Juno, I guess, but
yeah.
They're the biggest factor in the modern day, and they still sort of feel like a side thing because we haven't really had much. I mean, that's probably also just a symptom of the modern day right now. We haven't had much movement in it at all for a while.
And with Syndicate not having it's going to like follow Unity's modern day kind of like not really existing. I just want more modern day, and I want more sages. I want more First Civilization stuff. But I think Darby McDevitt said that he was working with like a core team of guys and girls. Like
500 years of First Civ history.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Hey, and they're probably going to start with that in Unity if they wrote it just
Syndicate.
last year. I mean, in Unity, in Syndicate.
Maybe they did
Victory
start with it in
again.
Syndicate, but we didn't hear any of it.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I hope you're right.
But I suspect that that'll get teased out in some capacity in Syndicate. Because if they have all this history, they're going to start implementing it, and they know that people like us think, hey, Unity was a serious letdown because there was no modern day besides a woman on a computer screen screaming at us. Let's get some history here.
So I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys think that there will be an Assassin's Creed game set in the First Civilization time?
I think it's a neat idea, and it's been thrown around quite a bit, especially on the subreddit recently. There are a few posts, but I can't remember who said them. I think the reason that it wouldn't work and why Ubisoft probably wouldn't jump on it is because Assassin's Creed is such a franchise that's grounded in history, and while the first Civ would be really cool to see, and maybe you could kind of go like in some game, like with the modern day segments of AC3, like there are a couple 5-minute missions where you jump back. You couldn't set, I don't think, a whole game in it because there's no history, no characters to draw from, and it wouldn't be a typical Assassin's Creed game.
Right.
Yeah, I think particularly with the annualization of Assassin's Creed, which I'm not particularly against. I don't really want to get into that because that's a loaded discussion. They want consistent sales. So the main games especially, I don't think they want to go out and try something that'll really shake up the series like that, something really radical. Just like drop a core pillar of the game in hopes that something else will do really well. That being said, I can fantasize. I'd love that. Actually, personally, anything that can get us to expand on that lore. I mean, even if it's just like a Chronicles game with a good story.
That'd be fantastic. I would love to play that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Chronicles was great. Gameplay, just the story would be great. But yeah, I mean, Assassin's Creed is one of the new big multimedia properties, and I think they have the capability with all that. I mean, they have books. They've done a couple little short movies. I mean, they have the capability to expand on that lore, but I don't know if they will.
And this week, our weekly discussion thread is OSTs, otherwise known as original soundtracks. If you've played Assassin's Creed, you will know that the music is absolutely fantastic in every way, except in 3 where there's no ambient music. God damn it, but we'll get to that later. This discussion will have no spoilers because it's music. And unless you want to know what happens to Ezio's family at the 275-minute mark, sorry.
Spoilers! There is
Spoilers for a song with no words in it.
There are hints of Ezio's family in the Assassin's Creed Rogue theme. Oh my gosh.
You know what? Screw it. Let's talk about the Rogue theme.
I thought you were going to go that way.
So, I love the Rogue theme. Actually, no, McCracken, wait, you say something.
Well, okay, so I guess we're keeping with the Rogue theme real fast. Rogue and Unity did this. I liked somewhat this idea you can tie the series together with this theme, which ironically is, Ezio's family. It's about a specific person, and it's become this. I don't want to. I guess it could be an anthem for the series, but I like that they tied that together a little bit because we've had a lot of disparate soundtracks. I actually thought Rogue's theme, although I liked it, I feel like it's a bit ham-fisted in its inclusion of the theme. But it's still, used in the game, it works very well, especially. And I'll listen to it whenever. So.
It feels like a very, recognizable. As soon as you hear it, you're like Assassin's Creed. And as soon as I turned Rogue on and I heard that, I was like, I feel like I'm home or something. This is amazing.
It fits with the idea of Rogue being a love letter to Assassin's Creed fans. It takes AC2, AC3, and AC4 and just smashes it up into one wonderful song.
There's two sides to this as well, though. Like, it's cool to have this callback or this link to past Assassin's Creeds. But one comment I've seen, I think a couple months ago, there was a discussion on, probably it's specifically that song, the Assassin's Creed Road soundtrack, and how it linked that together. And while, some people were like, I like how this links everything together, other people were like, I kind of want the Assassin's Creeds to have their own styles, their own pieces of music. And I think I got into an argument with this person. I was like, yes, you're right, but because, if you think of Pirates of the Caribbean, right? You think of this, you have like a significant piece of music in your head, or Star Wars for probably a more recognizable example. For me, it's Pirates, because I like Pirates better. So, I would agree, you shouldn't overuse that theme, but I do like that it links it, because honestly, it feels like we've been getting a lot of one-off games recently, and it's nice to have a bit of more linkage.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Unity also had a couple songs that there's just like one little 5-second section where it's
and it sticks it in like
and just kind of fades away.
Yeah, it sticks it in a lower octave. Man, this is gonna be fun to edit because I'm probably gonna include some of these songs.
But I have
first
to say,
time editing, and I get to do all this. Yeah.
I have to say real quick with more Assassin's Creed 2 and the Brotherhood soundtrack. My cousin Dan and I, when we're like thinking up stuff for our show, we'll sit in my car and just listen to this stuff, like kick the seats back and just like look out the sunroof and like think about life. And this music is playing in the background, and we're like, why would anyone listen to anything else? This is just so good.
Yeah.
I agree completely. I've been studying to Assassin's Creed music for the past 3 years. It's been fantastic.
It's the best.
I wrote a paper using, I put together, not necessarily, it was some calm music, but it was mostly the music that I felt like evoked mystery, and I outlined a paper on the American Revolution that way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. My papers have become sticky notes over like half of the wall recently. So it feels like, as well, like I'm plotting out like a mystery or whatever.
Actually, I wrote a proper paper for an English class in junior year on City of Rome, basically the Rome theme in AC Brotherhood.
This is not
awesome.
And I like the way that song is made. It's genius because there's the bit with the fiddle, which is a very fabled and mystical instrument in Rome because it was historically, or it was. The myth is that it was played several times when Rome burned. It's a complete lie. But the fiddle shows up, which is cool. And it's kind of divided into 3 different bits, kind of like how Rome was a kingdom, a republic, and then an empire. Ooh, spooky. But I think it's very neatly constructed to kind of parallel Rome in a bunch of interesting ways.
Yeah, let's actually go this direction. So everybody loves Assassin's Creed 2. There's a lot more mixed feelings about Assassin's Creed Brotherhood as a soundtrack, which I think is interesting. For me, coming off Assassin's Creed 2, it felt very different. It felt, but I don't know, it kept some similar qualities, which actually I think I could talk about more in depth in a second. But I want to focus on Brotherhood right now. One of the things I liked about Brotherhood's soundtrack, for the most part, is that it evoked a very different mood. Whereas, like, Assassin's Creed 2 was, the Renaissance, this kind of time of peace and discovery and stuff. Especially going with this idea that Rome is like controlled by the corrupt Borgias. I liked that the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood soundtrack felt kind of hostile, actually.
Yeah.
I feel that. It felt kind of spooky in certain ways. Because it's this ancient city with all these ruins and stuff.
Yeah. Do you remember Countdown? I don't know if you know that. Oh my god.
It's just got the whispers in the background and it's ticking the whole time. And that played in most of the missions, but it was actually really cool.
Speaking of whispers, in Echoes of the Roman Ruins,
that is my favorite song on the soundtrack.
I took Latin in high school, so I realized that the kind of like, not squeaky voice, but the really high falsetto that the person singing is, kind of beginning middle bit. They're actually saying Omnia licita, which is everything's permitted in Latin, which I thought was really cool. Like the 150th time I heard the song, I'm like, holy crap, that's Latin for everything's permitted.
That is
And
awesome.
you would never hear it if you never knew Latin. Even if you did, it took you 150 times
really
to hear it.
interesting.
But such a wonderful little detail that nobody's going to notice. But
Yeah.
it was just really cool.
Yeah, I really liked that as well. That's my favorite song on the whole album, I think, personally. But actually, one that I think is also really interesting that is not talked about much, and it goes along with the hostility thing, is actually Master Assassin. It doesn't play in the single player much, but it plays in the menu and I think when you're waiting for multiplayer sometimes. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, to me, back when, and they kind of get a bit towards it too, like, when I first started playing Assassin's Creed, it kind of felt like everybody was the bad guy, and this song kind of went with that. It felt like, because it's a very hostile kind of song, but it's Master Assassin, right? Our Master Assassin is Ezio Auditore, who everybody loves and is a charming ladies' man. But I guess it could go with the couple episodes ago we talked about the Ezio as a fanatical madman thing, and it kind of goes along with that, I guess.
Couple episodes. That was like episode 4.
Yeah.
Let's see. We talked about AC Brotherhood. Should we talk about AC2 or AC Revelations? Which direction are we going?
Well, so let's briefly say Assassin's Creed 1 had interesting songs, but I feel like on a whole, it was a little. It was not the masterpiece that
It's
the later
not
soundtrack
special.
did.
It was good, but it wasn't special.
It fit the mood.
Yeah.
But, if you're listening to it, it's not the kind of thing you'd listen to, like, on your own just for fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially because, like, one of the better songs in it, I think, is actually Access the Animus, which is, like, 11 minutes long.
Yeah.
So those songs are always hard to listen to. But, yeah, so let's go from Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2. Everybody loves Assassin's Creed 2.
Yeah. So much great stuff.
I think, actually, Assassin's Creed 2 did a thing with the music. Well, it did a couple things with the music that I really liked. I'm talking a lot, but I'm going to keep talking.
If you're saying good things, it's okay.
Yeah, so one of the things Assassin's Creed 2 did, and it's actually also kind of in Assassin's Creed 1, it really kind of stays through, say, Revelations, but there's this mix of music styled after the time period and the setting with some elephants that would be more at home on a sci-fi soundtrack, which really set the character of Assassin's Creed for me, especially because the modern day and it's framed by this mystical device. And I thought that was really interesting, personally. So I'll just... you guys have anything to say about that before I move on to my next thing?
No, it's a really cool, hearken to the modern day and to, like, the mystery of this first civilization that was, like, super advanced. I just, like, completely agree with you.
Yeah. So the other thing, and I mean, this is a little bit broader, but Assassin's Creed 2 had this amazing opening, and everybody really likes standing at the top of the tower. And there's the quote, and there's the music, and there's the title screen, and I think the thing that really makes that for me is the music. And ever since then, with every Assassin's Creed, they've tried to recreate that with varying degrees of success. So
AC3 was quite good with Hatham on
Yes.
top of the thing looking
Oh,
down.
yeah.
AC4 was kind of like, we're going into Havana and title card. Wait, what?
yeah, yeah. I actually kind of liked Freedom Cries. That
I remember Freedom Cry.
Well, I mean, you wake up on a beach and you kind of look up at Saint-Domingue, and you get... I don't remember if it is the Freedom Cry, the name of the piece, or one of the other ones, but it really establishes those African vocals really early on, and it's really interesting, I think. But back to Assassin's Creed 2. You guys have anything else to say about that?
I like the city songs. My favorite.
Yes.
Obviously, Ezio's Family is quite good.
My favorite song, actually, when I first got the soundtrack was Home in Florence.
I was going to say Home
Oh
Influence.
my
I love
God.
that. At first, I didn't like it because the xylophone bugged me.
That was my
but then
favorite
after
part.
listening for more than 2 minutes, I was like, oh, wait, this is really cool. It's just all these strings just going for minutes on end. And I had a habit of whenever I played AC2, I would take the voice volume to 2 out of 10 and just keep the music at 10 out of 10 and just turn the volume on my TV way up high so I'd have music going all the time. And I actually tried to avoid fights because if I got into a fight, the song would reset and I'd lose where I was. But Home in Florence, I adored. Tour of Venice is my favorite song in all of Assassin's Creed. It is the most serene, calming piece of music I think I've ever heard. And it's perfect because Venice was the serene republic.
Yes.
It's just this little violin going and I think it's a xylophone. But just that melody, I can just think of it in my head and it'll instantly just make me feel like at peace.
Yeah. There's just something about the way Jesper Kyd wrote his music for Assassin's Creed. It was just insane. And then
Beautiful.
from Brotherhood, there's a song, Apple Chamber, and it's just like super mysterious and it's like eerie and very first Civ, and I'm like smiling, all, weird.
Yeah. So yeah, the Venice soundtrack was great. I think that's Assassin's Creed 2 pretty well covered.
Yeah, for the most part.
So we'll move on to my personal favorite soundtrack as a whole, which is Assassin's Creed Revelations.
Oh, ACR was great.
Yeah. For one thing, they released all the songs. Actually, there's a complete edition that's like 30 or 40 songs long.
Damn.
Yeah, which has, they also released the 3 discs on their own. So there's 3 different ones, and then there's the whole big one as well. And that one I thought was interesting. Some of my favorites are actually not the ones I'm about to talk about, because my favorites are things like Scheduled for Deletion.
That was good.
Yeah, Scheduled for Deletion. Really short song. Awesome, though. Actually really also like Sophia Sartor.
That was good.
Yeah.
1 minute long, but still fantastic.
Yeah. I would always love grabbing the books because for a couple seconds after the cutscene ended, it would still be playing. But we had a rehash of themes from Assassin's Creed 1, which we hadn't heard for a long time. And I thought that was really interesting, actually, because it was focused on both of them. There were specific ones like in the Altair memories. There's things called like No Mistakes, which are essentially like remixes of the old songs. They also use in the Hagia Sophia. They use, I think it's Flight from Jerusalem as the music for that. And when I first played it, I was like, why do I feel like this is awesome? And then I remembered what song it was, and I was like, yes. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I keep talking because I'm music and stuff, but well,
You're what?
So if there's anything else to say on Assassin's Creed Revelations apart from my adorations,
I personally quite like Byzantium and Welcome to Constantinople. They're both very different songs.
Is my favorite.
Byzantium is kind of a very powerful thing. Like, I forgot how the melody goes, but it builds in the middle very nicely. It's just the suspense, and I wouldn't say it drops because it's not a dubstep song, but it hits rather, I'll say.
Yeah.
And it's very strong. Constantinople, or Welcome to Constantinople, is very cool. It's kind of like it's the song that plays when you're sailing in on the ship, and I can kind of feel like a tide in the flow to the melody that's very kind of watery, flowy.
And all the songs for me, it might have been because I knew how old Ezio was in the game, but had a very seasoned, somber feel to it.
Yeah.
And it was just really kind of sad, but it was nice. It was like a nice sad.
Yeah, a lot of the songs in Revelations were like that. Especially going off the titles, I felt like you wouldn't know. It was kind of ambiguous whether they were about Altair Ezio, because you're following both of their last days is assassins. Altair's literal last days, Ezio's last days as an assassin. But yeah, moving on, I guess. Actually, Revelations kind of ends this thing I talked about before, where we have the kind of sci-fi influence in our soundtracks, at least for a little bit. I mean, we get Assassin's Creed 3, which is done. We no longer have Jesper Kyd. We have Lauren Balfe, who also worked on Revelations, and he did some great work in Revelations. And I think he does some really interesting things with Assassin's Creed 3, but we mostly lose that science fiction element.
Yeah, AC3, there are a couple songs that I quite enjoy. Fight Club I love because it's very fast-paced. I wish they played it more. The theme song is good. Connor's Life, or Connor's Story, I don't know what it's called, was a very good one.
Connor's Life.
Yeah, and then also Trouble in Town is just very fast-paced and fun.
I also really liked, I mean, we talked about Venice's themes. Another really good theme for a place that was kind of serene, I thought, was Homestead.
Yeah,
that one I think works really well. Let's see, there's also, I think for me, one of the problems for me with I like Assassin's Creed 3's soundtrack for the most part, but I find myself not listening to it much, and I guess that's just because there are fewer interesting songs on it for me personally.
Because there was no ambient music in the game.
Yeah, which was a bit. Actually, one thing about the Assassin's Creed 3 soundtrack that you wouldn't hear just listening to the soundtrack, you wouldn't notice, but one of the things they did with that is, especially with the fight theme would add or drop parts depending on how many enemies you were fighting at the time.
I hadn't realized that.
Yeah, there's actually on YouTube somewhere, there's a pretty good video that, I mean, it doesn't show you the enemies. It's just like, this is one enemy, this is two enemies, and it goes like up and then it goes down again.
That's super cool.
Yeah, because it's a 4-phase song, ABAB. It's kind of like a low thing, and then it kicks up, and then it drops back down, and it kicks up, and then ends.
And it's actually about how many enemies you're facing at the time. So
yeah, and it'll just loop that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that was actually really interesting. I don't know that they've ever done that again, but it was an interesting idea that I feel like most people didn't realize. So next time you're playing Assassin's Creed 3, listen to that. If you're playing Assassin's Creed 3 again, I will, because I play all these games again.
Yes.
So then, moving on to what many people consider to be, some people as good, some people say better, some people, fuck, it's pirates. Just, Assassin's Creed 4.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It
was really well
so
done.
So whimsical.
Yes.
And I was listening to it again, and, people said it was just Assassin's Creed Pirates of the Caribbean, and I don't know, maybe it's that I disagreed with them very heavily when I first, like a year ago when I was playing AC4 and AC4's most recent, but it does, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's like, Assassin's Creed Pirates of the Caribbean. I would say it's more like, it's just this teeniest bit like pirate cliche, I guess. But that said, it's still great and beautiful and awesome.
Yeah, like I didn't even pay attention to the people saying it was like Pirates of the Caribbean or anything like that. It felt like this is the kind of music that I would hear if I was back in that time period.
And I guess to some extent you could say it works with the plot, because one of the things people complain about with Assassin's Creed 4, but other people are like, it's awesome, is that Edward spends a lot of time not as an assassin. And the music kind of reflects that, I guess. It's more just neutral piratey, I guess. Which is, I mean, that sounds like it just
it doesn't sound
a condescending way
stereotypically
to
Assassin's Creedy.
Yeah,
I think is what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
right. But it does sound like it's like a massive adventure you're about to have when listening to this music.
Yeah.
And then
I think adventure. There's a lot of great songs like the Men of War and oh god, I don't know what the other ones are called. But basically the naval combat songs.
Pirates Beware.
Pirates Beware has a good part that kind of kicks up and is intense and whatnot. But I think it has some of the best combat songs because it's the naval songs. They have to be, it's like you're sailing these huge ships. It has to be big and powerful, and it does that very well. But I also think that it has some of the best calmer songs in franchise history in terms of the soundtracks. In This World or The One Below is all sorts of fantastic.
Oh my
I love
God.
that song to death.
Yes.
Also, I adore the British Empire. That one it's the melody that is used in the AC Rogue theme song, and the bell dinging is just great, and I love it.
And
Matt, you're going to say something?
Yeah, when you're just like sailing your ship and your guys start singing the sea shanties, and it's like you find yourself singing along with them, or even in my case harmonizing with them. I'm just like enjoying myself harmonizing with these rough and tumble dudes, and I felt like a real man.
I think both of us have done that as well. I mean, I'm studying as a musician, and Aries here is an amateur singer, so.
Yeah, there was a period of about half a year or whenever I drove, I'd just be, belting sea shanties.
Yeah.
I'm not driving anymore, so I don't really do that.
Man,
but,
we had that
before I went to
idea.
Boston-
We had that idea at the beginning of last year to get together a sea shanty club, and we never got that together. But
The problem was
God.
we needed a lot of people, and we didn't know anyone else besides us who wanted to do this.
I would literally drive to Boston to be a part of your sea shanty club.
We need to promote that more next year.
Yeah.
We should try to do that, or at least just go to Marsh Plaza and start singing.
So yeah, AC4, pirate soundtrack, shanties. I mean, do we want to talk about Rogue more? Rogue,
besides the main theme, there's not a whole lot to cover.
Yeah.
The Morrigan theme song is very good. I quite like it. A lot of good naval songs. It's not as powerful as AC4, I would say, but it's quicker. Because the AC4 is, rather the Morrigan's a more nimble ship than the Jackdaw. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for Rogue on my end.
I mean, not in the game, but I liked in the actual soundtrack album, they included the song from the reveal trailer called Hood, which is a good one for just feeling like a badass.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, Assassin's Creed Rogue, like AC4, but slightly less memorable. For the most part.
Similar themes, but not themes like similar ideas in the music.
Yeah.
But just not quite as, smaller games, so you wouldn't hear it as much.
And then finally, I guess we move on to Assassin's Creed Unity, which was a controversial game, has a somewhat controversial soundtrack. People saying, the whole thing is kind of meh, or like because it's done by two composers, this composer is meh, or whatever. I personally think that although there are some duds in there, both composers put out some really strong stuff. For instance, the person that most people kind of hate on is Chris Tilton, who did Volume 1, I guess you could say. That is actually what it's called. It's called Volume 1. But he put out Versailles for Sore Eyes and Chase by
The titles
Chase
in the
Bases.
Unity soundtrack were fantastic. Titles were the best titles.
Specifically Chris Tilton's. Chris Tilton's are all puns.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Versailles for Sore Eyes, beautiful. I would say it stands almost amongst some of AC2 stuff, but you don't hear it in the game so much, so I feel like people don't have that basis. And Chase by Chase Basis is pretty praised as well. But, I mean, I guess the standout feature for Unity is the harpsichord. But actually, with the harpsichord, Unity, I feel, and you can hear it actually, it brings back that sci-fi element a little bit. It's back in the music again, which is ironic because the modern day is kind of off to the
Doesn't
side.
exist.
Yeah. They're like, hey, remember this great thing we used to have?
Yeah, exactly.
Compensates.
I don't know. Unity is becoming one of my favorite Assassin's Creed soundtracks. It's still not Assassin's Creed 2 for Revelations, but it's in there.
Which composer did the theme song?
Are you talking about Unity or
Unity.
So the one that plays in the menu?
I think so. Yeah.
That's That's Chris Tilton, I
Okay.
believe. Sarah Schachner, or forget exactly how to pronounce her last name, but she did. I forget what it's called, but I can find it because I have my iPod right here, and I was listening to
What
it.
do you guys think of the Unity theme? I thought it was interesting, and it's used well.
Yeah.
In the scene where Arno jumps off the tower with Belek, or after Belek. It sounds very strong and evocative of the game and whatnot when it's played in the game, but when I listen to it by myself, it's like nothing happens.
And it also, yeah, and some of the bits, I think, not the whole song, but like a piece of it is played in the menu when you hit the pause menu, which is kind of, I mean, we've had this kind of ambient noise for the rest of the Assassin's Creed, so it's weird to hit the pause menu and suddenly have this like full-bodied soundtrack, and it's not that interesting of a piece in that part. But actually, Sarah Schachner, she did a really interesting piece called "Rather Death Than Slavery," which has the French national anthem in it, and I didn't realize it was the French national anthem until like my girlfriend listened to it, and because it sounds so like. I mean, the French national anthem, like any anthem, is, it's a major key song. And the way it's done, it sounds minor and really, like, it's really, it's hard to describe. It's a beautiful, amazing piece. I don't know that it's used in the game very much, sadly, if at all.
One last thing, and then we can wrap up the discussion, but McCrackenway, you mentioned the use of the Unity theme song or parts of it in the pause menu screen. One thing that we didn't mention in Rogue was that the pause menu screen sounds like it is played backwards, and Putrid Moldy Man actually was kind enough to reverse it so you can hear it, and it actually still sounds backwards that way too. So it's weird because it sounds backwards no matter which way you play it.
One of the interesting things...
It's very eerie, and it plays to the theme of Shay kind of being in this limbo between Assassin and Templar.
The other thing about that, I mean, it's very similar somewhat to the ambient noises we've had in past Assassin's Creed pause menus, but I think it's the only one that's been released on the soundtrack. So I think it's
very unsettling.
Yeah, Animus Black, I believe is its name.
Yep.
Because there's both Animus Black and Animus White on the thing, and I don't remember which does what.
I think it's Animus Black.
Yeah, I don't remember what Animus White is used for. Whatever. So yeah. I mean, we're going to leave out all the DLCs because they all have their own soundtracks too, but we've already been going for almost a half hour on the soundtracks alone. I
mean, it's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of really great music.
I mean, the shanties could have their own discussion.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Can we make that a weekly discussion thread, Aftermath? I know you're listening, please.
TLDR, for some reason you skipped to the end of this discussion.
And skip to this exact moment.
Yeah, they're all great. Listen to the soundtracks; they're good. If you appreciate music, it's good. I mean, video game soundtracks in general are, I think, a good. If you're on iTunes, they're a good purchase. If you're anywhere else, they're just a good thing to have because it's like one album with more songs that you get in like a band's album. And if you've played the games, you already know if you like the songs or not.
Right.
Great for studying. I cannot say that enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of the episode. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I think this is the coolest podcast on YouTube, and I listen to you guys every night before I go to bed, and it's just super awesome.
Thank you. We love your show, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
If you liked any of the music in this episode, there's a lot. I will probably link all of it down below, along with the timestamps for each episode's discussions. So we can be contacted on Reddit, assassinscreed.reddit.com, or reddit.com/r/assassinscreed. I mean, on there we go by the same usernames we go by on the podcast.
Except I have numbers.
Yeah, you have numbers. It starts with a 2, it ends with like a 6. Anyway, so as well as you can also contact myself or Aftermath on Twitter, or all three of us, the hosts, through our email, animusislandpodcast@gmail.com. Next week, we'll be joined by Shadow Marcus of Assassin's Access the Animus fame, as well as rejoined by our Kiwi host, Aftermath. Until then, goodbye!